victors in the World Cup tournament here at the White House. This was to be a celebration, but at the beginning of his remarks, the president urged the nation to keep the Kennedy family and the Bessette family in its prayers.
It is at times like this that we really stop to recognize that as big and diverse as our country is, we can come together as a national family. We can come together in sorrow or in joy if it reflects the values that we honor most. This is one of those moments.
A little more than an hour ago, the president spoke by telephone to Coast Guard Rear Admiral Richard Larrabee, getting an update on the investigation. Sources here at the White House tell us the admiral told the president there were several promising leads, but still nothing definitive to report in that search. And as the nation here waits for word of that search, the First Lady, Hillary Rodham Clinton, putting out a statement today saying she will postpone her latest trip to New York to explore her running for the United States Senate. She thought it would be inappropriate to go this week. She has postponed a trip that was scheduled for tomorrow through Thursday. She says both the Kennedy and the Bessette families are in her prayers as well. Natalie?
All right, John King reporting live from the White House.
And our coverage on the John F. Kennedy Jr. story will continue. First, let's check in with Rhonda Schaffner in New York with the latest on business news. Rhonda.
Hi, Lou. Stocks remain lower on Wall Street as investors cash in some profits after Friday's record closes. Even a round of healthy earnings, not enough to stir investor enthusiasm here. Many investors waiting to see how IBM and Microsoft do after the closing bell. The Dow Jones Industrial Average currently off 21 points. Johnson & Johnson Coca-Cola down $2 apiece. Broad-based weakness is pulling the NASDAQ composite lower. The NASDAQ is down 23. In the bond market, the 30-year Treasury issue is also down just slightly. The yield at 5.89%. The nation's largest financial services company, Citigroup, reported a 21% surge in operating profits. Global corporate and investment banking profits jumped 26%. Another Dow stock, JP Morgan, reported better than expected results too. Operating profits of Wall Street brokerage firms soared 25% from a year ago. Stock of Citigroup is currently up a half. JP Morgan is up 1 3/8. One of America's most powerful businesswomen is taking the top spot at Hewlett-Packard. Carly Fiorina is moving from her post at Lucent Technologies to become president and CEO at Hewlett. Fiorina spearheaded Lucent's 1996 spin-off from AT&T in one of the biggest initial public offerings in Wall Street history. Fiorina will replace Louis Platt. He announced his plans to resign at the end of last year. HP will become only the third Fortune 500 company with a woman in charge. Hewlett stock is currently trading at a 52-week high on the news. It is up almost $3. Lucent is down 1 3/4. For a lot more market news, check out the CNN-FN website at cnnfn.com. You can log on to get stock quotes and advice on personal finance. That's the latest from Wall Street. CNN Today will be right back.
Hi, I have a question about buying stock. What's the difference between a market order and a limit order? Hello? Excuse me.
When you have an investment question, does your online brokerage have anybody there to answer it? We do.
Now you can own the major companies driving America's economy, all in a single security. It's called SPIDER, index shares that closely track the performance of the S&P 500. In one share, SPIDERs give you ownership in the entire S&P 500. They're traded all day on the American Stock Exchange, just like stock. Just go to ticker symbol SPY. Why try to outguess the market when you can own it? Call your broker or 1-800-THE-AMEX.
For about the price of an ordinary hotel, Residence Inn gives you a full kitchen, a living room, and 50% more space. Out. What you do with all that extra space is up to you. Residence Inn by Marriott. Room to relax, room to work, room to breathe. Residence Inn proudly serves up the powerful AT&T network. Dial 1-800-CALL-ATT for your calling needs. Anywhere, anytime.
A tribute to John F. Kennedy Jr. blankets the walk outside his New York apartment building. Hundreds of people are stopping by his doorstep to leave a flower or a candle. They're expressing grief in poetry and remembering JFK Jr. in prayer. CNN's Richard Roth is at the site of the vigil in Manhattan. Richard?
Yes, Lou, they don't really have that much time to leave their message or to light the candle, and when they do, they are surrounded by cameras and other people who are carrying home video cameras and still photographs of the scene. I saw one well-dressed couple get out of a taxi cab. The man took a picture of the woman, and then they got back into the cab. Let's take a look at the scene right now behind me. It's been more congested at other times, but police have been moving some of the crowds away. People are stopping and gazing at various signs that are up and notices. We have tried not to talk to too many people here, but we did ask a few questions of one woman who said she came here with her 2 children.
I would like the kids to see this. They don't know who he is, though.
What are you telling them? That's okay.
By working here in the neighborhood, we usually see them, especially him on skates, back and forth. I had lunch one day in the cafeteria over here, and he walked in, he spoke, very friendly person, and it was just so devastating. Him and one of his friends came into the restaurant here on the corner to have lunch, and I was there with my daughter, and she said to me, she said, "Mother, don't turn, but here comes John. And I turned, I said, "Who, where?" And he heard me, and he just said, "Hello, how are you? Enjoy your lunch." And since then, he just seemed so personal.
I really looked up to John F. Kennedy Jr. He was a really good guy, and he had a lot to offer to the world. And he was just real quiet, and he really just picked his spots to speak and choose, talk about different things. And he had a lot of resources at his disposal, and he just did a lot of good things. I just kind of emulated him a lot.
It's obvious both Kennedys would have detested the scene going on outside their apartment building right now. It's unclear how long this will go. The police do not plan on closing off the street. Still, people do come here, and many do really mean what they write and what they think. It's just that they're not exactly getting a very quiet moment to pass those thoughts along here on the streets of Manhattan. Back to you, Lou.
Richard, you've talked to many of Mr. Kennedy's neighbors. We understand even this mega celebrity was just a regular guy around the neighborhood.
A regular guy, at least he tried to present that image. They thought of him as more than that, though. One woman told me he was a prince. Another used all types of descriptions of him. But he definitely wanted to be seen as an average guy. He rollerbladed in Central Park, fought for the causes of New York City, and tried to live a very peaceful life here in a rather nondescript 10-story building here in the Tribeca district. He was able to blend in, though most New Yorkers will tell you they remembered when they saw him somewhere.
All right, Richard Roth, keeping vigil at the vigil, and CNN will continue to follow all developments in the search for JFK Jr.'s light airplane. At 5 p.m. Eastern now, the National Transportation Safety Board plans a news briefing on the search. CNN will provide live coverage of that. CNN and Time will have special coverage of the story. JFK Jr., America's Prince, can be seen tonight at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. Also tonight, CNN's Larry King Live covers the story. Larry will talk with close friends of John Kennedy Jr. and his wife, Carolyn Bessette Kennedy. That can be seen at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Well, so much empathy is being focused on the Kennedys. Many Americans express concern for the family of Carolyn Bessette Kennedy and her sister, Lauren Bessette. Their parents live in the Greenwich, Connecticut area where the girls grew up and have many friends. And we turn now to Greenwich for more. Reporter Deborah Fayerich joins us. Deborah?
Well, Natalie, CNN has now confirmed that the Bessette family will be issuing a statement later this afternoon. It is scheduled to take place at about 4 o'clock. It will be very brief, and we are told that the spokesperson for the Bessette family will not be taking any questions from reporters. Now, that statement will be issued several miles from here. We're right now in Old Greenwich. This is where the 3 Bessette sisters grew up. Carolyn Bessette Kennedy went to a local Catholic high school, while her sister Lauren, who was also on board that plane, went to Greenwich High School. The mother, who is remarried, lives just up the road from here. That street, as you can imagine, has been guarded by police cars. The family has remained in seclusion since this accident occurred. The former co-worker, though, of Carolyn Bessette Kennedy's did speak about her relationship with the Camelot heir.
She knew what she was getting into, and she adored the guy. I mean, she had such respect for the way John had conducted his life, which, you know, was exemplary in every way. I mean, education and manners and charm and great looks and all that. And with all of that fame, how he conducted himself in such a, you know, wonderful manner. And beyond even the romance and everything that they had, she had such you know, deep, deep respect for the way John had handled the responsibilities life put in front of him.
The mood here in the town, very somber, as you can imagine. Again, the Bessette family will be issuing a statement at 4 o'clock this afternoon. It will be brief, but it is the first statement from the family since the accident happened on Friday. Reporting live from Greenwich, Connecticut, and Deborah Farrick, back to you, Natalie.
All right, and we'll continue to bring people more news about this tragedy. We're expecting a statement, as she said, from the family at 4 o'clock. We'll bring you live coverage of that. Now let's get a look at the weather. Here's Valerie.
Natalie, loose and big thunderstorms developing across New England that should be moving into the Cape area within the next couple of hours. You can see the line of storms, some big ones over Connecticut into central Massachusetts at this hour, and this is along a frontal boundary where severe storms are possible. There could, in fact, even be a severe thunderstorm watch issued through southern New England back into New York and New Jersey as we go along through the afternoon hours. There's a slight risk of severe weather from Ohio, Pennsylvania, into southern New England through the afternoon today and into tomorrow morning. Also some thunderstorms possible across the prairies, southern prairies of Canada, northern plains in the United States, Montana, and into the Dakotas. If you look at our forecast sequence, you see a stationary boundary through the northern plains back into the northern Rockies, through the Ohio Valley, and then dropping across New England. As the system moves out of New England, the area should be cooler and drier tomorrow, but also windier with the seas building 3 to 6 feet. You look at the southeastern United States, not much change, hot, humid, scattered showers and thunderstorms, especially during the afternoon and evening hours. Our forecast for the temperatures, there are heat warnings and heat advisories in effect. New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington today with a heat index of 100 to 105 degrees possible. And as we head westward, or at least we're going to very slowly, also a heat advisory in effect in the St. Louis area. If it's not the heat, perhaps it's your allergies. Here's the CNN Allergy Report.
Moderate levels of grass pollen will extend from the Ohio River Valley back through the plains today. Parts of the Rockies will also have moderate levels. Low levels are expected over the rest of the country. Mold spores, though, will be in the high range over much of the Midwest today, extending back down to the Gulf Coast. Moderate readings are also likely along the entire eastern seaboard. Weed pollen in the moderate range over parts of the Northeast, the upper Midwest, and the Southwest. In the allergy fact today, yellow dock, sheep sorrel, and monk's rhubarb are part of the rumex weed family and are potent causes of hay fever symptoms. The leaves of sorrel sometimes appear in salads and sauces in restaurants. I'm CNN meteorologist Dave Hennon.
The CNN Allergy Report is brought to you by Tylenol Allergy Sinus. Take comfort in our strength.
A lot of people think the best way to deal with allergies is to take a prescription. But you see, the leading allergy prescription only relieves these symptoms. But Tylenol Allergy Sinus relieves all these. Tylenol Allergy Sinus. Take comfort in our strength.
Don't worry, little one. Daddy's got Tylenol for his headache. Tylenol works on headache pain without the risk of stomach irritation. So before you know it, Daddy's going to be right as rain.
With all his talk about changes to Medicare, we were confused.
I'd only read a few things about the new Medicare Plus choice option, but I didn't really understand it or know how it might affect our current coverage.
We needed answers to these very important questions.
So we called this toll-free number and received this valuable guide to health insurance for people with Medicare, absolutely free, from United American Insurance Company.
This free guide could answer a lot of your Medicare supplement questions. I know it did for us.
With United American's Medicare supplement policy, you'll have the freedom to choose the doctors and hospitals you want.
And almost all of your Part B process claims are filed automatically.
Call United American for your free guide today.
We're sure glad we did.
Yeah.
This informative guide to health insurance for people with Medicare could answer a lot of your Medicare supplement questions. To receive your free Medicare supplement guide, plus information on these affordable insurance plans available from United American, Call 1-800-742-0451.
You're looking at someone who just bought a home with no down payment. How? He called Ditech.com and borrowed 125% of the purchase price. With your good credit, you too can finance up to $500,000 with no down payment. Use the extra cash to pay closing costs, pay off bills, or buy new furniture. Buy a home of your own with no down payment. Call Ditech.com at 1-800-71-FIXED for the 125 Green Loan today.
A decision on the value of the only piece of film known to show the assassination of President Kennedy has been delayed. A three-judge panel was due to release that decision today, but put it off in deference to the latest Kennedy family tragedy. The U.S. government has offered the family of Abraham Zapruder $1 million, but the Zapruder family says the film is worth $30 million.
While Americans in every U.S. city mourn the loss of John Kennedy Jr., his wife and her sister, it is Boston that has a special affinity for the Kennedys. CNN's Jeff Flock has been speaking with folks in Boston and joins us now from outside the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library. Jeff.
Indeed, Lou, perhaps reflective of the mood in this town and elsewhere. The rain has moved in and dampened the spirits of all of the folks that have come here and dampened the flowers that perhaps you see off behind us on the John F. Kennedy Library sign. People have been bringing those all day. I'm joined by a couple of folks who have come to the library today. Karen, you came how far to bring what?
I came from Millbury, Massachusetts, and I brought a bouquet of flowers and a card.
Why did you do that?
Well, because I really love the Kennedy family, and I'm really feeling real bad for them and praying for them really hard that they can get through this with their faith and their strength in God.
Bob O'Brien, who was a veteran of the VISTA program and who President Kennedy inspired to government service, doesn't seem fair somehow, does it?
No, the family has given so much to the country. My heart goes out to them. I want to thank them personally for all they've done, and they've been an inspiration to me and my wife, and I feel very sad that there's another tragedy for the family.
Karen, do you think John Kennedy Jr. would have at some point followed in the footsteps of his relatives and been in politics?
Well, I think he has a lot of his father's qualities, and he is a very strong person, and that he has done an awful lot of good for America, and I really kind of had a feeling that maybe someday he would have been president, and he would have made a real good one, and that's what this country needs.
Bob, you feel cheated in any way?
Not cheated, but I feel that the Kennedy family is kind of the hallmark of holding up a lot of our democratic principles and ideals, and I hate to see any members of the family suffer any tragedy, because I think we needed good leadership and good ideals being put forth by public people, and any time any tragedy strikes the family, I feel very badly about it.
Bob, I appreciate it. Karen, thank you so much. Appreciate your thoughts. Here at the Kennedy Library, where folks have been coming all day, folks at the library here say a lot more people here today on this Monday, on this day, when folks are coming to terms with perhaps the loss of John F. Kennedy Jr. I'm Jeff Flock, CNN, reporting live from Boston, Massachusetts.
And just ahead, disbelief and grief at the loss of JFK Jr. stretch around the globe as the search for his plane goes on. We'll bring you the latest when we come back.
Today on CNN Talkback Live, another tragedy for the Kennedy family, remembering John F. Kennedy Jr. Today, 3 Eastern on CNN.
Inside NEWS-7 and Standard Mortgage have joined together to provide the most comprehensive online real estate service in the New Orleans area. I'm Edgar Bright, president of Standard Mortgage. Inside NEWS-7 is the best place to search for a new home. It has the latest local mortgages, plus you can calculate payment or apply for a loan, all online.
Where do you start online? Start inside NEWS-7.
time to move on?
Get moving.
It's about experience. It's about contribution.
Make it.
It's about satisfaction.
Find it.
Air Force Reserve. What a way to spend your time.
1-800-257-1212.
A look back at the life of JFK Jr. on Larry King Live tonight.
Here are the latest developments now in the search for the Kennedy airplane and the 3 people on board. Divers departed Martha's Vineyard a little while ago to take a closer look at 2 possible sites where the plane wreckage might be located just a few miles offshore. The sites were located by sonar during the night. We expect a news conference by the National Transportation Safety Board at about 5 p.m. If the sites do indeed contain wreckage, a Navy salvage vessel will be brought in to begin the recovery. That ship, the USS Grasp, is due into Martha's Vineyard in about an hour. The Coast Guard conceded late yesterday that the window of survivability has closed, and public displays of condolence are very evident. The best that can be hoped for now is to find the plane and bodies and determine what happened.
Perhaps the saddest element of this latest Kennedy tragedy is we'll never know what John F. Kennedy Jr. was truly capable of. Even by Kennedy standards, his was a life overflowing with promise. Here's CNN's Jonathan Karl.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
At the 1988 Democratic Convention, a 27-year-old JFK Jr. invoked his father's name and his message.
So many of you came into public service because of him. In a very real sense, because of you, he is with us still.
New York Democrats had, at one time or another, asked Kennedy to run for mayor, for governor, and for U.S. Senate. He finally jumped into politics, but as a magazine editor, not a candidate.
Politics is all about the human foibles and frailties of great men and women, the successes of the celebrated, and the accomplishments and courage of unknown heroes. It's a stage in which the mighty often stumble, the disgraced are often redeemed, and today's embattled long shot can become tomorrow's comeback kid.
In his writing and his speeches, Kennedy avoided partisanship. More than ideology, he expressed a fascination with politics that defied the political cynicism of his time.
Politics is only getting more interesting. People would always ask us, you know, what are you going to do in the down cycles? And there are really no down cycles anymore.
His optimism was reflected in one of his magazine's most recent projects, a book called 250 Ways to Make America Better. Contributors ranged from William F. Buckley to Larry Flynt. The opening editor's letter in George magazine served as Kennedy's main soapbox. After the death of Princess Diana, he wondered why Mother Teresa's passing didn't get more attention. The 3 days I spent in her presence was the strongest evidence this struggling Catholic has seen that God exists. The politics of scandal was a common theme. We are constantly confronted with the human frailties of our public officials, he wrote. But what does that have to do with the faithful execution of their public duties? Despite his reluctance to engage in partisan combat, Kennedy openly flirted with one day running for office.
When the old definition of politics was that you bring it at the end of your life when you really have something to sort of offer. Maybe that's a good thing for me.
And if he had decided to put his optimistic vision to test on the battlefield of electoral politics, John F. Kennedy Jr. would have found an army of political supporters ready to enlist. Jonathan Karl, CNN, Washington.
In other parts of the world today, the Kennedy story is being followed closely and in varying ways. Genuine sadness was etched on the face of this guest at John F. Kennedy Monument west of Jerusalem. Visitors there included a number of U.S. tourists. In Britain, newspaper coverage has ranged from respectful to the style employed by the mass circulation tabloids.
Congratulations.
Look what just arrived. Peanut butter chocolate and cocoa Rice Krispies Treats. 2 new additions to the Rice Krispies Treats family.
That's funny. They don't look anything like you. Here's my idea.
make our girls the Best Buy girls. Because they're growing up on Best Buy. With the new baby, it's great because Michael can take the photos and he can email them to our friends and our relatives and they can see her right there. Mika feels a sense of accomplishment that she knows letters and numbers.
Do you think you can do that, Mika?
It's just a lot of fun to watch them grow up with all this technology. Best Buy has been a part of their lives right from the beginning.
Tonight on CNN and Time, JFK Jr.'s endearing salute made him an instant celebrity and a media favorite. Now, CNN and Time looks at John, the images and the stories. What made him different from the rest of the Kennedy clan? Why did Jackie try so hard to keep John's life intensely private? These stories and more in a special CNN and Time. Tonight, 8/7 Central on CNN.
Weekdays on CNN-FN. From the opening bell to the end of the trading day, we'll bring you complete and continuous live market coverage and analysis. All you've come to expect from the most reliable source in the business, CNN-FN, the financial network. We mean business.
On CNN's late edition prime time, one of America's space pioneers, his return into orbit thrilled millions. Now on the Apollo anniversary, Senator John Glenn looks at what's ahead for the U.S. space program. Tuesday, 8 Eastern on CNN.
Our coverage of the JFK Jr. tragedy continues after a quick look at other news from our CNN Today notebook. A cargo ship loaded with fuel and food docked with Russia's space station Mir yesterday. Also on board, equipment needed to prepare the aging space station to be abandoned. Mir's crew, its last, is scheduled to return to Earth next month. A memorial service was held today for astronaut Pete Conrad at Fort Myer, Virginia. Conrad commanded the Apollo 12 mission, becoming the third man to walk on the moon. He was buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery. NASA is preparing to honor one of the greatest accomplishments in space exploration. 30 years ago tomorrow, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first men to walk on the moon. Armstrong, Aldrin, and Apollo 11 crewmate Michael Collins will be honored during a ceremony with Vice President Gore. And coincidentally, the Space Shuttle Columbia is set for a Tuesday liftoff with NASA's first woman commander at the helm. Air Force Colonel Eileen Collins will be at the controls for the overnight launch. CNN will bring it to you live 12:28 a.m. Eastern, that's 9:28 p.m. Pacific.
The core of our physical being rests in the brain, but science has barely scratched the surface of the mysteries of the mind. In today's Voices of the Millennium, the future of brain research.
Fight for human rights.
A hunger for love.
This is not just another emergency.
The most incredible computer in the universe, of course, is the human mind. We're talking about 100 billion neurons in the brain.
If I had one thing I could wish for the next millennium, it would be that all ages would embrace with enthusiasm the new findings from the brain research.
I think the next millennium is going to be the age of neurotransmitters, finding out what those chemicals are and how we can modify them to improve everything from our moods to our thinking ability to even the way the mind ultimately works at a spiritual level.
The major issue is to understand learning and memory, because if we don't understand that, it's going to be very hard to cure diseases such as Alzheimer's, which result in a loss of memory. And if you want to develop drugs to alleviate the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, one will need to know how one learns and how one remembers things.
We find that as the brain is challenged to exercise, take in new information, be curious about the world around it throughout life, it does not significantly lose its memory ability.
We need lots of new young scientists coming into the field to give us new ideas and give new vigor to the field. We're learning a lot, but we still have a lot to go.
This Voices of the Millennium is brought to you by Zales, the diamond store. Forever starts today with a diamond from Zales.
Zales reminds you that a new millennium only comes along once every 1,000 years. And if you've had the good fortune to have fallen in love at this time, there's only one way to mark the occasion. With the Diamond Solitaire from the Zales Signature Collection. An exquisite single diamond is a powerful gift. It has the power to take two people and make them one. At Zales stores nationwide, or shop online at Zales.com.
Let's get the latest now on the goings-on on Wall Street. Rhonda Schaffler joins us from the New York Stock Exchange. Rhonda.
Hi again, Natalie. Stocks here stuck in the minus column as investors shrug off some good corporate earnings news from banks and brokerages. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is off 40 points at 11,169. Dow component IBM is down about 50 cents. It reports earnings after the closing bell. The NASDAQ composite lower as well. The NASDAQ down 27 points. On that index, Microsoft is down 5/8. It, too, reports results after the bell. On Friday, Microsoft topped $500 billion in market cap, the first company to do so. In the bond market, the 30-year Treasury issues off 5/32 in price. The yield at 5.89%. And here's a case of human victory. First Union says it misjudged how much customers want to see people instead of machines when they do their banking. So First Union hired 1,000 tellers and plans to bring back at least 1,000 more. First Union laid off nearly 6,000 workers in March to cut costs as more and more customers did their banking by telephone, ATM, and on the Internet. Priceline.com will start selling Continental Airlines tickets on its Internet site. The website allows people to bid on airline tickets, hotel rooms, and other travel-related services. If the bid is accepted, customers must make the purchase. In the latest round of the Euro-American beef fight, the United States announced a final list of nearly $117 million in imports on which it will impose punitive tariffs. The products include pork, French mustard, truffles, Roquefort cheese, and fruit juices. The move is in response to Europe's ban on U.S. beef treated with growth hormones. The tariffs go into effect on July 29th and are aimed at eliminating the European products from U.S. store shelves. U.S. officials say the list is designed to inflict the most economic damage on France, Germany, Italy, and Denmark. Tonight, tune into the debut of the Moneyline News Hour's new anchor team. Stuart Barney and Willow Bay will bring you all the business news and insights you've come to expect from Moneyline. Tonight's guest, Treasury Secretary Larry Summers. That's at 6:30 Eastern. And that's the latest financial news. CNN Today will continue in a moment.
Stock Market Updates is brought to you by J.P. Morgan.
I will never let good interfere with great.
I will do more than what's expected.
I will not always have the solution, but I will always find it.
Я работаю в банке JP Morgan.
I work for JP Morgan.
I work for JP Morgan.
1, 0, liftoff. We have a liftoff.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Join Miles O'Brien as CNN commemorates the 30th anniversary of Apollo 11.
Your dough.
Now, CNN.com/health with WebMD offers the most comprehensive healthcare information online. From breaking news and cutting-edge treatments to alternative remedies, find the answers to your questions on CNN.com in association with WebMD. Change is in the air, and a familiar voice returns to the great debate.
Liberal
I am a liberal. I'm proud
no
to be a liberal.
partisanship
When
here.
conservative insider Mary Matalin joins Crossfire, Thursday, 7:30 Eastern on CNN.
I'm watching you, CNN.
Ask what you can do for your country. John F. Kennedy Jr. apparently took those famous words from his father to heart. He was involved in several charities, and among them, Reaching Up, a non-profit organization established by JFK Jr. himself to support the working poor, providing services to the disabled. Bill Ebenstein is the executive director of that organization. He also had a 10-year friendship with Mr. Kennedy. He joins us now from New York. Welcome, Bill. Let's get an idea of the altruistic side of John F. Kennedy Jr. What is Reaching Up, and why was Mr. Kennedy involved in this organization?
Well, he started Reaching Up about 10 years ago, initially to fulfill a family responsibility. The Kennedy family, through the Kennedy Foundation, has been helping people with disabilities for decades. As you're probably aware, President Kennedy's sister has mental retardation, and John wanted to contribute to that effort, but he found a unique way to do that. He felt the best way to provide service.
Excuse me, Mr.
Yes.
Evanstein, while you're talking, we're going to show some pictures that are just coming in now of the diving operation. As we mentioned earlier, there were 2 sonar hits made over night at this location. We're now showing live pictures. 2 sonar hits of wreckage, which now divers are going to be investigating at various depths to determine whether or not there's any reference here to the Kennedy plane crash off the coast of Massachusetts. This will be going on for several hours now. We understand the NTSB is having a briefing in about 2 hours to tell us if any progress has been made today, and this is part of that. So we'll be showing these pictures while we're talking to you, Mr. Evanstein. I'm sorry for the interruption, but you were telling us about reaching up, the fact that JFK Jr. established this 10 years ago, and it's on behalf of the retarded. We understand that the president's sister is mentally retarded. That's in part the reason why he was involved in this, is it not?
Yes, that's right. And what he wanted to do was focus on, not on people with disabilities directly, but the people who cared for people with disabilities. We call them the frontline workers or direct care workers. These are the people that provided basic care to people with disabilities. And these are working poor, low-wage workers. He wanted to professionalize the workforce, give them opportunities for higher education. He partnered with the City University of New York to give them chances to get ahead, to learn more, and to advance in their careers. And so his focus on providing better services, health services, education services, was to look at the frontline people and try to respect them and professionalize them.
Give us a sense of his involvement. Was it Kennedy money that was doing this, or was he personally involved?
He was, you know, he started reaching up. He's personally involved. It started with a very small grant from the Kennedy Foundation 10 years ago, and he's built it up into really a major program. He's been very quiet about it. But we would go visit classes in the evenings without anybody knowing about it. He met regularly with we call them Kennedy Fellows, these workers. He attended many events and was actively involved on really a daily and weekly basis.
Give us your sense of the man. We've had every kind of description of this man, which no one has an unkind word to say about. Not that we're looking for unkind words, but what kind of a man was he?
Well, you know, people are getting it kind of right. He's a very nice person. He's very respectful of people. He's very respectful of working people. He's very down to earth. He's someone who's in meeting, he's very curious to learn, and he's a very open person, interesting sense of humor. But he's a really a very nice person and a down-to-earth type of person, and as many people have expressed.
And it was nice of you to come in today, Bill Evanstein, with the Reaching Up organization, which JFK established. He's the executive director. Again, these are live pictures from off Martha's Vineyard. We explained to you earlier that sonar ships had identified a couple of targets they believe may be the wreckage of the John Kennedy Jr. aircraft that went down Friday evening shortly after 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and apparently took the life of John F. Kennedy Jr., his wife, and his wife's sister. Now, aboard this craft, at the location that's been identified, are divers from the Massachusetts State Police. They and others from the Coast Guard will be now involved in an operation to identify this wreckage, the sonar hits, the targets they're called. That wreckage will be determined. It will be determined whether the wreckage has anything to do with the JFK crash. If so, the USS Grasp, which arrives in about 2.5 hours from now, that's the same ship that was involved in the recovery of wreckage from the TWA 800 accident off Long Island, will be in the area, and that wreckage will be retrieved. So the operation, the search and recovery operation, is fully underway off the coast of Martha's Vineyard, and we'll keep you posted throughout the afternoon, and we'll have a briefing by the National Transportation Safety Board in a couple of hours, and they'll tell us if what, if anything, has been found here today. Natalie?
Quick check of the weather now. Let's go to Valerie Ross.
Well, Natalie, you could see in those pictures that it was rather hazy out there over the water. There is a line of thunderstorms now moving into eastern Massachusetts, across Rhode Island and Connecticut right now. We've had reports of winds of at least 45 miles an hour with some of these thunderstorms, and they are going to be moving off the coast and over Martha's Vineyard, the Cape area, probably within the next hour or so. Large hail is a possibility, along with heavy rains. You can see that it is very widespread rain across much of New England and New York. What it's going to do is get rid of the very hot and humid conditions that have been across the Northeast, bring in cooler weather and drier, lower relative humidities, but it's also going to bring some stronger winds from a northeasterly, northerly, northwesterly direction, which means that the seas, which were forecast today for 1 to 3 feet, are going to go up probably to 3 to 6 feet and perhaps even higher farther offshore, which is going to make it just a little bit more difficult to carry on with these search efforts. We'll keep an eye on these storms. CNN Today, I'll be right back.
Get breaking news, preview the markets, catch the scores, check the forecast, and do it all before you head out the door. Early edition, weekdays 7 Eastern on CNN.
If you're considering direct broadcast satellite TV, you might want to think about this. With cable TV, you've always been able to get local programming, like local news, sports, and weather. CBS systems don't carry local programming, unless you want to get one of these. You see, with DBS, you'll probably have to install a regular antenna in order to get the same local programming that you already have with cable TV. Might want to think about it.
If you're thinking about DBS, you might want to think twice. Cox Cable, the best value in home entertainment.
You won't get your hands on a QVC product until we get our hands on it. Some people say we're tough. Very tough. This is the drop test, where we make sure a product will hold up during shipping. These have to be rewritten. We stand behind everything we sell, so if somebody returns a product because they don't like the color or something like that, perfection, that's okay. I just don't want them to have to return it. Because it doesn't work.
It was called the greatest generation any society has ever produced. They were ordinary people who half a century ago did nothing less than help save the world. Millions served in uniform, millions more served at home, and nearly 500,000 gave their lives. And yet there is no national memorial to honor their sacrifice. It is time to say thank you.
Call now and help build the National World War II Memorial.
Not just of strength, but of the power of the mind. And if you complete the journey, you will be changed forever. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Sports Tonight with Fred and Vince, 11 Eastern on CNN.
America adored the boy they called John John and were infatuated with the man he grew up to be. Who was John F. Kennedy, Jr.? We'll talk to people who knew him and meet the man who took this endearing and enduring photograph. Talkback Live is next.
Like other big stories, this latest Kennedy drama has shown the internet to be a worldwide forum for public comment. CNN's Greg Lefebvre is keeping track of things on the web. He joins us from San Francisco. Greg?
Morning, Natalie. The circumstance is such that the internet has become the back fence, the world's cracker barrel, if you will, the place where people go to vent, to grieve, and in this case, to express their profound sorrow for what has happened to this family. A number of sites popped up over the weekend almost immediately. We'll go to ours, for example, here at CNN.com, CNN Interactive, has a special John F. Kennedy Jr. page that went up almost right away. It contained biographical information and a number of other segments as well. With it was a chat room that popped up, and immediately comment began pouring in. We've called up that chat room, and on the message board are quite a number of thoughts. Most of them are prayers that go out to the family in this heart-wrenching time. A lot of them talk about the Kennedy fame. One remark was, all this couple wanted was to have a normal life. There's also a fair amount of scorn for the media, for idolizing the Kennedy family, if you will. Over on the home turf at Boston.com, there was a chat room as well. The Boston Globe hosting remarks for folks essentially from the Northeast. However, comments here came in from all over the world that the Kennedy name carries a fascination and a jealousy. One person remarked on the fate of this particular Kennedy family and said, "I hope I master my faults before my plane crashes." There are a number of fan sites that are devoted to John F. Kennedy Jr. One of them is at GeoCities, an unofficial website that actually was taken down earlier this year. And I have to tell you, there's one closing remark that keeps coming up on these websites, and it is, when people think about this particular Kennedy tragedy, they say, "Where were you when you heard the news?" And recalling for many of us, that goes back a generation. A tragedy passed from one generation to the next. Greg LaFave, CNN Live in San Francisco.
And we have live pictures, the latest development in the search for the wreckage for the John F. Kennedy Jr. plane. These are vessels. There are 2 of them, 5 divers from the Massachusetts State Police on each vessel, each one at a different location. Sonar has hit 2 locations for wreckage. These are preliminary dives by Massachusetts State Police. There are 32 U.S. Navy divers expected to be arriving in this area later today, but they are not expected to begin their dives until tomorrow sometime. If that wreckage is indeed identified as the JFK Jr. Light plane that crashed Friday evening, the USS Grasp, the same ship that helped bring up the debris from the TWA 800 disaster, will be brought in, and the latest develops in all this will be coming in this afternoon, and we'll hear from the National Transportation Safety Board in a couple of hours and see if there's anything new that we should know about.
So keep it here on CNN. That is CNN Today. I'm Natalie Allen.
And I'm Lou Waters. Talkback Live is next.
This is CNN.
We are going to shift, and I say shift very purposefully, from our focus on search and rescue to search and recovery and supporting the NTSB and their efforts to determine the cause of this. We did everything we possibly could to find survivors from this incident, and I think the conclusion we came.
John loved life and loved having a good time. He was a hero to me, and it's difficult to have a close friend who is also a hero.
She was always laughing, you know, really a lovely person. You really couldn't say a bad thing about Carolyn.
I always really looked up to John F. Kennedy Jr. He was a really good guy. He had a lot to offer to the world.
I think we all need to remember them, keep them in our prayers. We all have children. We're all very sorrowful for what happened.
He was the Prince of Camelot, America's son. We'll talk to friends and acquaintances about the man who preferred to be just John. Good afternoon, everyone. Divers are exploring the cold Atlantic waters off Martha's Vineyard for the plane piloted by John Kennedy Jr. The Coast Guard no longer expects to find Kennedy, his wife Carolyn, and her sister Lauren Bessette alive. The 3 have been missing now since Friday night. CNN's Frank Buckley is in Martha's Vineyard with the very latest on what is now a search and recovery operation. Frank?
Bobby, we are standing by at Menemsha Harbor. This is the location from which 10 divers from the Massachusetts State Police left at about noon Eastern today, heading out to the location where there are a couple of what have been described as potential targets located by the side-scanning sonar aboard the NOAA ship Rudy. These divers will get into the water at some point and go down and investigate those potential targets. They will take a look at those targets to see if in fact they are related to wreckage or bodies. If in fact they are, they will have to make some decisions about exactly how to retrieve those materials and or those bodies, decide exactly how to bring them up. They have a variety of techniques they can use, and later today they'll be getting some help. In fact, at this hour, we're expecting the arrival of the USS Grasp, a Navy ship that has been steaming up from Norfolk, Virginia. They have some additional divers and capabilities aboard that ship. We are awaiting that at this hour. Bobby.
Frank, there's no way to tell at this time if those targets are the actual plane. In other words, when they pick up a ping like that, it could be anything, right? A sunken ship or rocks or
That's
whatever.
Right. It can be a false target. It can be a number of things, especially where you have jagged rocks at the bottom of the ocean. That can create the false targets. It can be a number of things. So really, that's why they need the divers. They also have some other capabilities, including tow video that they can drop in. The divers from Massachusetts, in fact, have a tow system that they can put in without divers at all, with a video camera aboard and a video cassette on board the ship that will actually allow them to look down to 250 feet of depth, if necessary, to see what's down there before they even put divers in.
Once they find the plane, if they do, there is no black box on an aircraft such as this. So what is it that they need to find that will help them piece together what may have happened?
Well, the NTSB, of course, will take the lead in the investigation, and they have to do a number of things. They've already started to do that. They will collect all of the items that they can from the plane itself. They will do their best to try to reassemble that airplane, and then they will take a look at that airplane to see if there are any physical things just by looking at what they've collected that will yield any clues. In addition, they'll be taking a look at radar tapes and air traffic control tapes to take a look at exactly what happened in terms of communications. Even though there's no black box, as they call it, there is some material that they can look at in that way. Additionally, investigators from the NTSB will interview witnesses. They have already started to do that, and that's how, so far, they've been able to put together a chronology of what they believe this flight has done. In totality, they believe that this investigation will be complete in 6 to 9 months. They'll probably have a working theory much sooner than that.
The weather looks good behind you. Is it cooperating with the search, and should it continue into the afternoon?
Well, that's hard to say, Bobby. I don't know what the actual weather forecast is. I can tell you that the sun has been coming in and out. It has been a bit hazy. Someone had said that there was possibly some rain coming in. That would be not a desirable condition for the divers. They could work in it, but the more the wind kicks up and the more chop there is, that actually can swirl up the sand and make visibility for the divers underwater difficult. So far it doesn't look too bad. It's been calm waters this morning, but we'll see what happens in the afternoon.
Is there any new information, Frank, on, and of course I know much of it can be speculation at this time, but what may have happened to this plane in terms of the speed at which it was approaching the airport or the rate of descent? Anything else that you know?
We know that the rate of descent, as they've calculated it so far, and this is preliminary based on the radar tapes that they've been able to put together. I believe one of the briefings was that it was descending at 1,400 feet per minute. The briefers who talked about that said that, in fact, the plane, the Piper Saratoga that went down, was capable of sustaining that rate of descent. So it wasn't so fast that the plane would break apart at that descent. Beyond that, the technical sort of capabilities, I'm not a pilot, so I couldn't say.
Question or comment from the audience, Ballard.
Yes, is where they're searching at now, is that where the plane dropped off of radar?
It is in the general area. It's believed that the plane dropped off of radar approximately, I believe it was 17 miles off the western tip of Martha's Vineyard. It's significantly in from that. I believe we're in the area of 4.5 miles was the last known debris field. We don't know, to be honest with you, exactly where they are searching, because they've told us yesterday that that debris field was 4.5 miles off the western tip. It's difficult for us to get close, and quite frankly, if you have too many surface ships in the area, it can hamper the search activity. But our best bet is that it's about 4 miles off the western tip of Martha's Vineyard.
Frank, did you say that the divers are in the water right now at this hour? We're getting indications that they are.
We believe they are. They left here at about 12 o'clock Eastern. I've talked to some boaters in this area. They tell me that it's about 35, 40 minutes to the location that we believe the search is taking place. So that would have placed them on scene by about 1 o'clock, and soon after that they could have been in the water.
Questions from the audience? Let me go ahead with Nita. Go ahead,
You
Nita.
said there are divers in the water. Are there sharks in that water? Are they concerned about sharks?
That's a very good question. Ma'am, I don't have the answer to that. I don't know if there are sharks in the waters here. I assume there are, but I just don't know.
They usually take precautions for that sort of thing if there is, I would think.
Right. I mean, most waters do have sharks, and frankly, most sharks do not attack people. When they do attack people, it's often a mistake. They're going after something else. So anyway, that's about sharks.
Another question, Chris? Up here to Michael.
Yeah, behind you I can see some people on the beach there. I was wondering what the general sentiment is right now of the actual people that are there near the search.
Well, I can tell you that Martha's Vineyard is a place that many people come to for vacation. People had their vacations scheduled. They are doing their best to enjoy their vacations. Clearly, we're a distraction to that. This is actually a harbor where the film Jaws was filmed in the 70s. And you might recall the scene of sort of manic hysteria around that, people trying to enjoy themselves, the authorities here, the media arriving. It is pretty close to that sort of a scene. This morning, all of the satellite trucks came into what is a very quiet harbor with a very small beach that's in a quiet part of Martha's Vineyard. Now you hear the sound and the hum of generators. I can tell you that the people here who live on the island do feel a kinship to the Kennedys. They've seen the Kennedys around. They've felt positive feelings from the Kennedys. Many of them have spoken to John Kennedy and have had very nice experiences in speaking to John Kennedy. So people do feel very badly about what's happened. They were expecting it, and now they got the worst news.
Frank Buckley, thanks very much for joining us. We appreciate your time. In 1995, John Kennedy Jr. had an idea for a political magazine. It would be young, hip, and sassy. It would be called George. At that time, Nick Nyan would get together with Kennedy and brainstorm story ideas. Currently, Nick is a partner in the internet research firm Dynamic Logic, and he joins us from New York. Nick, thank you for your time and thoughts to come.
Thank you.
When did your friendship with John begin, and how did it begin?
It began in 1995. I had just been working for Mario Cuomo, who lost in '94, and I was basically a young guy in New York looking for work. And he recognized that and saw that I had some political ideas. And I called him through a mutual friend, and he said, can you come work for me? We've got some ideas for a magazine. We have a business plan. There's only a couple people involved, and we need some help. So I went in there kind of thinking, wow, this was lucky. I found a great opportunity in New York, and there he was. I went into the office, and the first image I have of him is waiting to meet him, and he comes, the elevator door opens, and outbounds this giant German Shepherd, which he pretty much took with him everywhere, as far as I could tell. And that kind of broke the ice. It was like nothing would be too formal or pretentious about him. Everything was just relaxed and fun.
Did he know anything about running a magazine, or did that not matter?
Well, it didn't matter to me. You know, he had people around him who were very knowledgeable. Michael and Gary and Rosemary were the team at that time, as far as I could tell. But John knew what he didn't know, and what struck me was that he would actually listen to other people's ideas, including mine. And I was just, you know, a guy who he barely knew. And he was very receptive, and I was surprised because I thought that, quite frankly, he'd be a little, you know, he'd treat me like hired help, but he didn't.
You guys basically wed the idea of celebrity in politics in George magazine, and with a tongue firmly planted in cheek often. When did it strike you that the person running the magazine was that exact mix?
Well, you know, the idea for the magazine was not mine, it was his and his partner's, but what struck me is being around him and seeing the world that he lived in and the types of people who'd call his office and the memos that would go across his desk and so forth, was that he was really in a unique position to do this type of thing. It was his vision because it was a view from really the top of the mountain of power and influence. Everybody in politics and in entertainment and in business is trying to climb this mountain, and he was born at the top of it. So he has a unique perspective to look down, see who's climbing, see who's doing interesting things that are both novel and newsworthy. And so I think the magazine was putting his vision on paper.
Question from Cheryl in the audience.
Yes, some people have said that the magazine was John's way of staying connected with politics without actually being a part of it. Did he ever say anything to that effect, or what do you think about that?
He never told me what his master plan was. I honestly think that he was figuring it out as he went along, and he was doing what was fun and what felt natural. And I also think, I mean, you think about it, you know who his family is. I mean, this was, in some respects, a step in that direction. He was taking a risk by doing it. There were people who were going to ridicule him for anything he did politically because they would always compare him to his uncles and father. So I think it was a step, and unfortunately, we'll never know.
Was he a good manager? Was he good with people?
He was great with people. I mean, I had a limited experience with him, and I would have stayed if they could have offered me full-time employment, but the magazine wasn't solidified yet, so I didn't know if it was going to happen. But he was very kind to everybody. I mean, the type of person who in New York would hold the elevator for somebody, which is unusual in New York.
Nick, stay with us if you will. We have to take a quick break, and when we come back, growing up a Kennedy biographer Christopher Anderson reveals how Jackie tried to toughen up her son and keep him away from his cousins. We'll be back in a second. Rory Kennedy's wedding was supposed to have been this weekend. 6 months before she was born, her father Robert was assassinated. Her brother David died of a drug overdose when she was 16. And her brother Michael, who was also her godfather, died in a skiing accident 2.5 years ago.
They're twice as bright as halogen lights. They illuminate 70% more area for greater visibility and safety. In short, they're the closest thing to daylight since daylight. Revolutionary, new xenon lighting technology. One of the dozens of bright new ideas on the Infinity Q45.
You're looking at someone who just bought a home with no down payment. How? He called Ditech.com and borrowed 125% of the purchase price. With your good credit, you too can finance up to $500,000 with no down payment. Use the extra cash to pay closing costs, pay off bills, or buy new furniture. Buy a home of your own with no down payment. Call Ditech.com at 1-800-71-FIXED for the 125 Dream Loan today.
Nicorette isn't casual gum. It has a purpose. It helps you stop smoking. And you don't chew it like regular gum. You bite it until it tingles. And then you hold it between your cheek and your gum. And the tingling lets you know you're getting the nicotine you need to help fight your craving. And as your cravings get fewer and fewer, you use less and less Nicorette until you use none. And none is a wonderful number.
Now, Nicorette is available in mint. What a refreshing choice. You can do it. Nicorette can help.
New man in charge. Exclusive interview. Know where the nation's new Treasury Secretary thinks the economy is headed. Lauren Summers joins Willow Bay and Stuart Varney on the Moneyline News Hour. Tonight, 6:30 Eastern on CNN. You are what you know.
Tonight, on CNN and Time, JFK Jr.'s endearing salute made him an instant celebrity and a media favorite. Now, CNN and Time looks at John, the images and the stories. What made him different from the rest of the Kennedy clan? Why did Jackie try so hard to keep John's life intensely private? These stories and more in a special CNN and Time. Tonight, 8/7 Central on CNN.
I'm Roger Schaffer on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange with a check on the financial markets. Investors going through earnings reports today. There is a lot of them, including IBM and Microsoft. Both those companies report after the closing bell. Both stocks fractionally lower. The Dow Jones Industrial Average at the moment is off 36 points. JP Morgan bucking the trend, though it's up better than $1 on its strong earnings report. The NASDAQ is down some 26 points. That's the latest from Wall Street. Talkback Live continues.
And welcome welcome back. Christopher Anderson is the author of 2 unauthorized biographies on Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. The most recent is titled Jackie After Jack, Portrait of the Lady. Christopher, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Bobby.
Was there anyone in JFK Jr.'s life who had more impact on him than his mother?
No one. I mean, the people have to know about John Jr. was that his mother was the most important person in his life, that he was indeed his mother's son. You know, it's interesting when I look at those pictures of him early on as a child. We had a really early indication of the kind of young man he was going to grow up to be. When he was only 6 years old, it was the 3rd anniversary of the assassination of JFK, and he was going to St. David's School in New York, and his mother went to pick him up and walk him home because she thought he'd need the company. And as they left, they turned around and noticed that they were being followed by a group of little boys who began to taunt John with the chanting, "Your father's dead, your father's dead." And all John did was look up at his mother and squeeze her hand and keep marching. And she said at that moment it was as if he was trying to protect her. And they had a very, very, very special relationship.
We had an internet comment there a few moments ago, said that they were glad that Jackie Kennedy was not around for this. I mean, had her death, her son's death preceded her,
It would have destroyed her, I think.
It would have destroyed her.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, she was always very ambivalent about raising him. I mean, you know, he was fatherless. She didn't want him to, actually in memos to the Secret Service, she kept on saying, I don't want him to be a vegetable. I want him to be somebody who can get out there and live life. So I want you to protect him. I don't want you to smother him. I don't want you to pick up his toys or follow him too closely, or I don't want him treating you as servants. And there was one line in one of these memos that's now particularly chilling. She said, look, at the beach, I'll be the first line of defense. Drowning is my responsibility.
So how did she go about doing that? How did she go about trying to give her children a normal life in the glare of the spotlight, and also in the glare of what this family lived for, and that was public commitment? How did she do that?
Well, it was very, very difficult, obviously, the fine line she had to walk. You know, on the one hand, again, she wanted him not to be afraid of living. She wanted to toughen him up, as you said earlier, and that meant she sent him on survival expeditions to a remote island off the coast of Maine in one instance when he was quite young. I think when he was 17, he went to Kenya. At that point, by the way, he disappeared for 2 days back then with his party, and it was a very tense time. A lot of people don't realize that behind the scenes there were a number of very harrowing moments for Jackie as a mother. I mean, when he was 5 years old, John fell into a bonfire on a beach in Hawaii and had to be rescued by the Secret Service. Another time, both he and Carolyn in 1968 disappeared for a few hours, and there was great panic and a feeling that maybe the president's children had been abducted. They actually turned up at a neighbor's house. But she was vigilant, and she was very concerned about their safety, and these were fears that the public never knew about.
And her son, on the other hand, was adventuresome, to say the least, and a risk taker without being reckless, from all accounts.
It was very important that he be kept away from those risk takers in the Kennedy family who really might lead him down the wrong road. I mean, one person told me, who knew them well, that the single most important decision she made was to remove John and Carolyn from the influence of some of the wilder Kennedy cousins. And so the way she did that was she allowed them to share in the legacy. They certainly showed at family gatherings, showed the flag, but she tried to make sure that they kept their distance. In one instance, for example, she sent John Jr. to Micronesia on a fishing expedition, and she said to Peter Duchin, her close friend, gee, Peter, do you think that's far enough away from the other Kennedy kids? So she was always worried, you know, that this kind of thing, the thing that has happened to him might happen, and that really makes the tragedy that much more intense.
Joe in the audience, question or comment, Joe?
I have more of a comment to make that I was one of the people who stood across the street from the White House waiting for John Kennedy's body to be received at the White House. And to see this happen to John really struck me, because when Jackie moved with them to New York, she was looking for somebody to watch the children. And my sister-in-law was on her way from France, and she was a registered nurse, spoke French naturally. I thought it would be a natural thing for Jackie to hire her to take care of the children. And unfortunately, she returned a letter, which was really made me feel that the family is the #1 family to us in America, and it was all over the world, actually, at that time. And she wrote me a letter back apologizing that she had just hired somebody from London, and it was too bad that she couldn't hire my sister-in-law. That struck me that Jackie was our #1 lady.
She had that reputation, Christopher. She was always an extremely gracious person.
And her children as well, I have to say. You know, Arthur Schlesinger said there was a gallantry about Jackie, and I really think the same can be said of John. I mean, he really grew up to be quite a spectacular young man, and I think he had a great political future ahead of him. I think we just, as we heard today, there have been reports that he intended to seek the Senate seat of Patrick Moynihan until Hillary stepped into the ring. I think he was intended to do that. He'd just been biding his time, and it's just a great tragedy that time ran out.
Kind of ladies first. You know, the downside to the Kennedy legacy can be that feeling that you're flying higher than the gods, that you have a sense of immortality. Do you think that John Jr. Had a touch of that in his personality?
I have to say that, you know, I mean, young people in this position obviously may have a little touch of the feeling of invincibility, and that is sad because, of course, when you're flying a plane, the slightest mistake, I don't want to be premature, and we have no idea what the cause of this accident was, but, you know, he did take the occasional risk, but he certainly was not as reckless, as you say, as some other members of the extended family. And by the way, Carolyn of Bessette was reluctant to fly with him, as you know. His in-laws apparently were reluctant to, and there was some feeling that Jackie did not want him to take up flying, and during her lifetime, he did not.
Question from the audience?
Yes, Tim.
Kim.
Bobby, I was 5 years old at the Air Force Academy in 1963 when the president came to speak at the graduation of the cadets there, and that was a significant event in my life because it caused me to want to grow up and to join the military in the Air Force and also serve in Washington in some capacity. And then, of course, later on, you sit in front of the television set just a few months later and you see the black and white footage there. But as Barbara Walters said the other night, John is America's son. And so I look at, in some ways, John as being like America's little brother. And so Caroline was a few months older than me, John was a few months younger than I, and so we grew up. And now I've had the opportunity myself to look in the Oval Office and to see that famous desk where the president hid candy and bubble gum underneath so that his son, John, could come and grab a piece of gum underneath the desk. And history was made, and now the torch has been passed.
You know what? Let me bring another guest into the conversation at this time because some of those images you refer to, Tim, this man is responsible for. On the day when John Kennedy Jr. turned 3 years old, he, along with a mourning nation, paid tribute to his father, and it was this image that captured an innocence wrapped in courage, dignity, and pathos. It touched America's heart, and it is part of our collective memory. There it is. With us today is the man who caught the salute on film. Joe O'Donnell was the official White House photographer, and while some 500 photographers snapped similar shots, his is the one that we remember. Mr. O'Donnell, take us back to that day, if you will, and how that picture came about and what impact it has had on all of us.
It was just a normal coverage. I had a telephoto lens on my camera, and we were across the street behind what we called the bull rope that we had to stay there. And when the casket was coming down the steps, I sort of got ready because I didn't know what was going to happen. And as we got past John, he then saluted. And I had the telephoto camera, and I got just him full size, which is right here, if you can see it. This is the picture that I took of him, and it's black and white, and he had a little blue coat on. And many people will remember this photo because I have seen it 100 times in the last couple days.
Were you, as the photographer, struck by the poignancy of this gesture?
Yes, ma'am, I was. Very much so.
What did the picture mean to young John Kennedy? He, of course, barely knew his father. Do you know what this picture meant to him?
He really didn't remember the photo. He has seen it, but he has no recollection of doing that.
Mm-hmm. We have to take a break, and we will continue here in just a moment. Stay with us. On her graduation day in 1993, Carolyn Bessette Kennedy quoted lyrics from a Pink Floyd song. For long you live and high you fly, the smiles you give and tears you cry, and all you touch and all you see is all your life will ever be.
Now, people cruising the internet looking for health information and support can go to the same place doctors go, WebMD. WebMD opens up access to trusted health information to everyone. It uses the power of the internet to bring people and doctors closer together and will help us all make the leap into the future of healthcare. Health finally has a homepage, WebMD.
Introducing Benecol.
My doctor said I need to watch my cholesterol, but it's hard.
Now there's new hope for millions of people concerned about their cholesterol. Benecol. It's a completely new kind of product used in place of butter or margarine. Studies show that Benecol actually helps promote healthy cholesterol levels, and it can start to work in as little as 2 weeks.
It really tastes good. And it's good for my cholesterol?
Benecol isn't just low in cholesterol, it actually promotes healthy cholesterol levels.
Now available.
Sound is free. And so is our hearing test. Belltone invites you to hear what you've been missing. Call today for a free hearing test. Belltone. Listen again.
Freedom. Control. Just you and your laptop. Log on to autobytel.com for dealer cost info, reviews, and a low, no-haggle price. Autobytel.com. The road to your next car.
There are lots of ways you can get nail fungus. Like this. Or this. Or this. But now there's a good way to get rid of it. By seeing your doctor. That's because nail fungus lives deep under the nail, turning it colors, making it thick or brittle, and hard to get rid of. But by calling this number, you'll receive a free video and learn how it may be possible to get beautiful, healthy nails back. Nails that are clearer. Nails that look cleaner. Nails you can feel better about. Because today, your doctor has effective treatments that attack the fungus right where it lives. So call to find out if you can have healthier, clearer nails. We can't help you avoid getting nail fungus, but we can help you learn how to get rid of it. Norm in our audience has a comment. Norm, go ahead.
Bobby, the thought came to mind that John obviously didn't have very many activities with his dad after 3, but certainly he must have remembered the pictures all over the world, and the famous incident with John F. Kennedy in the PT-109 boat. The thought came to mind that he was, rather than being overconfident as a pilot and seeming invincible, kind of just being a pilot, like his dad was on that boat. Kind of like father, like son situation. And confident rather than prideful.
Any thoughts on that from any of our guests? No? Okay. To the audience then, Michael.
Yeah, I think that is the word invincible, I think, because of the age that he was when this happened, is that many people feel that he was invincible, and that has a lot to do with the reason why the media is so into this situation right now.
Mm-hmm. Nick, did you play a lot of sports with John Jr.?
No, I didn't. He was hard to keep up with. He was always on the go. I know he was very active. And I tell you, a lot of the times in the office, he was dressed in sports clothes because he was out the door quickly to do something.
We'll be back in just a moment.
Tonight on CNN and Time, JFK Jr., the images and the stories. CNN and Time, tonight 8/7 Central on CNN.
If you're considering direct broadcast satellite TV, you might want to think about this. With cable TV, you've always been able to get local programming, like local news, sports, and weather. CBS systems don't carry local programming, unless you want to get one of these. You see, with DBS, you'll probably have to install a regular antenna in order to get the same local programming that you already have with cable TV. Might want to think about it.
If you're thinking about DBS, you might want to think twice. Cox Cable, the best value in home entertainment.
InsideNewOrleans.com, New Orleans' best local website. InsideNewOrleans.com gives you the best way to search for local websites. Search by your favorite category. It's easy. InsideNewOrleans.com is where you can find the best local websites for New Orleans and the entire West. It's about connecting you to the world, but always bringing you home. So, where do you start online? Start inside. InsideNewOrleans.com.
A look back at the life of JFK Jr. on Larry King Live tonight.
I'm Lou Waters in the news. President Clinton and the Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak are wrapping up a meeting at the White House. They're expected this afternoon to announce new U.S.-Israeli security agreements, including a deal for Israel to buy up to 50 F-16 fighter jets. The two leaders are scheduled to begin a joint news conference at 4 p.m. Eastern. When that begins, we'll have live coverage for you. A new study offers fresh hope for heart patients. Tests involving 1,600 patients showed a rarely used, inexpensive drug called aldactin may reduce the risk of death from heart failure by nearly one-third. Researchers found aldactin found it effective when added to standard therapy for severe heart failure. The New England Journal of Medicine released that study early because of the drug's life-saving potential. The Space Shuttle Columbia is on the launch pad, and it's ready to go into space in just a few hours. The mission centers around deployment of the Chandra X-ray telescope designed to search for signs of black holes. That launch is scheduled for shortly after midnight. CNN will cover that live. In about an hour and a half, we expect a news conference by the National Transportation Safety Board. NTSB investigators will fill us in on the progress of the search for the JFK Jr. airplane. We'll have live coverage. For now, I'm Lou Waters. Back to Talk Back Live.
In a situation like this, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of press about the curse of the Kennedys, sense that somehow that the family is under some kind of divine retribution for some reason. And I would say that this is clearly not a Christian idea, that there's any kind of curse. If there's any curse the Kennedys experience, it's simply the ugly side of the blessing of their wealth, of their power, and of their fame that puts them in the public spotlight and that puts them at risk.
Welcome back. Let me ask Christopher quickly in light of that comment. What do you think John and Jackie both would have thought of all this coverage?
Well, you know, Jackie was really very happy that people paid attention to her. I mean, she did enjoy the limelight, and she did know how to work the media by being somewhat aloof. She paid very close attention to everything that was written and said about her. I think she'd be really, encouraged. It's rather heartwarming to know that the world is grieving for your son. But it's hard to even get back past the idea that he's gone and has died in this manner. Because as we said earlier, I think this is the one thing she worked her entire life to keep from happening to him.
Joe, it never looked to me like John Jr. was camera shy at any time in his life. Was he like that as a child?
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Okay. Would you repeat that, please?
Yes, I was going to say it never appeared to me that John Jr. was camera shy in any way, shape, or form when it came to, I know he didn't like publicity, but he was not camera shy per se. Was he, as a child?
Out of my ear, that's why I couldn't hear you.
As a child, was he?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. As a child, was he comfortable being photographed? And
oh, yeah.
With a big ham in front of the camera?
Right. He would go in the desk that the president had a lot of doors underneath, and he could go in there and hide. He could open it up and look out at the press. He had a ball with that desk. I think it was an old captain's desk, many compartments in it. And he was not afraid to laugh or hide. He was just great with the press.
What was your favorite photograph?
The one I took right here in my hand, the one of him saluting. I was across the street when they come out of the cathedral, and I had a telephoto on my camera. And when he pulled up to salute, I got a very close-up lens, which is right here. And I'm very proud of that picture. And go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And I've seen it 100 times, I think, in the last couple days.
Let's meet a couple of other people who knew John Kennedy as a child. Alexander Thoreau once taught English to John Kennedy, Jr. In 1978, he was an instructor at Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts. And Herb Spector spent a summer as writing instructor for the Kennedy children. Welcome to both of you. Mr. Thoreau, let me start with you. What year did you teach John in school, and what sort of student was he?
I taught him in 1978. He was actually, I was actually writer-in-residence that year and the following couple of years. He was an average student. He was not bright with a capital B, nor was he dumb with a capital D. He was a very plucky, very quiet student in class, often late with his papers. He wrote a very interesting paper on Herman Melville for me, and I remember he also wrote, I thought, a rather original paper on Clarence Darrow, which made me think that he might go in, follow law, which he eventually did.
Was he a good writer?
I taught he was an average writer. I always thought he was an average kid, except for one thing. I thought he always had to buck the kind of pedigree that he had. And Marcel Proust once said that in every relationship there's one who kisses and one who extends the cheek. And John, to me, was a person that always extended the cheek. He never really had to, it seemed to me, to work hard, because people always met him more than halfway. I've noticed recently interviews by Larry King and Tom Brokaw and so forth, the way they perspire and work so hard and seem so urgent to try to relate to him. And John was very passive because of that, and not passive in the sense that he was lazy, but he was passive in the sense that he didn't have to work hard, he didn't have to stir hard for people to come to him.
Did people at the school in particular, since he carries the legacy of the Kennedy family, did they expect him to be smart? Did they expect more out of him?
Actually, I think they expected him to be with a kind of inverse snobbery, expected him to be dumb. And I think that's one of the great myths about John Kennedy, that he was dumb. He was actually very intelligent, but not a genius. I mean, he was a very average-minded student, very capable, not extraordinary. And his writing was, I thought, was not unique. I had a photograph of his father. The one thing I asked him to do before he left to graduate in '78 was to write something about his dad. And he wrote a very sweet, semi-Hallmark Cardish series of thoughts about his dad, whom he never really knew. But I say, John Kennedy to me was like a salmon that had to swim upstream. He had to work hard to find, to make efforts, I think. And that's one of the reasons why I think he sought to do things rather than to make things. He was always playing football, flying planes. He was looking for things to do. I always thought in the 60s it was interesting that people didn't make, they rather did. And John was not a person, he was not an intellectual in my opinion. He was a person that did things outside, perspiring, running around.
Well, one of the things he did very early in life was horseback riding, and Herb, you were the man picked to be the instructor for not just the two Kennedy children, but I think for a number of the children in the family, correct?
For the children of all the families, yes.
So how did that come about, and when was this?
This was the summer of 1963. I was between my junior and senior year of college, and this was not a political appointment. I just simply happened to be in the right place at the right time, and I was offered a job for the summer up at Cape Cod.
And were they receptive? I mean, 3, that's young to put kids on a horse. I know that's a good thing to do, but it's young. Did they enjoy it?
They had been riding all their life. I felt like at times I was up there just to simply clean out the stalls, saddle the horses, and feed them at nighttime. But I did work with the children every day, and they were good kids. They did not, they were not standoffish. If you asked them to do something, they did it. The way you saw Caroline and John grow up is the way they were when they were young, because their mother instilled tremendous values in them.
We will talk more with our guests in just a moment. We have to take a break. On Mother Teresa, John F. Kennedy Jr. wrote, "The 3 days I spent in her presence was the strongest evidence this struggling Catholic has seen that God exists."
For about the price of an ordinary hotel, Residence Inn gives you a full kitchen, a living room, and 50% more space. Out. What you do with all that extra space is up to you. Residence Inn by Marriott. Room to relax, room to work, room to breathe. Residence Inn proudly serves up the powerful AT&T network. Dial 1-800-CALL-ATT for your calling needs. Anywhere, anytime.
Here's my idea. Make my boys the Best Buy boys because they've grown up on Best Buy. When you wake up, it's, do I get computer time? It's amazing what they're learning. They're glued to the computer. They love to watch themselves on TV. They just are fascinated by anything that has a button on it or a dial. Technology is really a part of our daily lives.
Bringing technology home, one family at a time. Best Buy.
Now that's a great idea.
Gail and Lynn both rely on voicemail when they're out of the office, so both of their pagers tell them when they get one. But since Lynn's pager doesn't tell her who left the voicemail, she has to check every single one. But Gail has SkyTel, the voice messaging service that tells her whom a message is from and if it's urgent, so she can tell when it's important or when it's not. Which means that while Lynn's on the phone, Gail's on to dessert. SkyTel puts you in control. Can your pager do that?
1, 0, liftoff. We have a liftoff.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Showing Miles O'Brien as CNN commemorates the 30th anniversary of Apollo 11.
Your go.
Stock Market Update is brought to you by Travelers Property Casualty and Travelers Life and Annuity.
I'm Rod DeShaft. We're on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange with a check on the financial markets. Stock market in a bit of a funk this afternoon, even though we've had companies report better than expected earnings. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is currently off 30 points, bucking the trend of Hewlett-Packard, up 3 points at a 52-week high after naming a new CEO. IBM is fractionally lower, as is Microsoft. That's weighing on the NASDAQ. It's down 25. IBM and Microsoft report after the bell. That's it from here. Talkback Live continues.
Question for our teacher from BG. Go ahead.
I wanted to know, did John get along well with the other students, and how did the other students react to him because he was a Kennedy?
Mr. Thoreau, can you hear that? Did you hear us on that one?
Oh, yes, I did. I did hear that. I remember one of the difficulties of teaching that class was that John Kennedy was I thought, better looking then than he was now. And the girls had a lot of, were completely distracted by trying to impress him, I think, in a kind of oblique way. He was. I wanted to mention also that he was a big weightlifter in high school, in prep school, and spent a lot of his time lifting weights. And I used to constantly josh him, asking him to spend less time lifting weights and more time reading his Strunk and White book on grammar.
And his father was an atrocious speller, too. Maybe that's where he got that.
Of course, William Faulkner was also a bad speller and wrote some brilliant novels.
Herb,
I came to...
You were with John at a very early age when he was 3, and what was his interaction then with the kids, other children?
Oh, as far as with the other members of the family, they were all out there at any given time. They all got along. There was a tremendous camaraderie between the families, and I just keep on repeating that in general, all the kids were just good kids.
Were you under any restrictions at all, being that you were basically an employee of the family at the time? I mean, because of their concerns about publicity. And...
For a standpoint of privacy, I was asked not to take any pictures, and I honored that request all summer.
But you have pictures. Where'd you get those?
It took 35 years, and last summer I went up to the Kennedy Library, actually last March, with my wife. We went to the Kennedy Library, and we wanted to get into the archives. And as fate would have it, the archives was closed for the weekend. But when I got back, I called the head of the archives. I explained to him who I was, and he, out of nowhere, he just said to me, "I know who you are. I have pictures of you."
Oh, so you can have some. Oh, great. Good for you. We'll be back with final thoughts in a moment.
With all this talk about changes to Medicare, we were confused.
I'd only read a few things about the new Medicare Plus choice option, but I didn't really understand it or know how it might affect our current coverage.
We needed answers to these very important questions.
So we called this toll-free number and received this valuable guide to health insurance for people with Medicare, absolutely free, from United American Insurance Company.
This free guide could answer a lot of your Medicare supplement questions. I know it did for us.
With United American's Medicare supplement policy, you'll have the freedom to choose the doctors and hospitals you want.
And almost all of your Part B process claims are filed automatically.
Call United American for your free guide today.
We're sure glad we did.
This informative guide to health insurance for people with Medicare could answer a lot of your Medicare supplement questions. To receive your free Medicare supplement guide, plus information on these affordable insurance plans available from United American, call 1-800-742-0451.
In the midst of the poor people, the International Magna Carta.
We shall be free someday.
We won't be visited by aliens, I don't believe. In fact, I think there are really good arguments that it's just prohibitively expensive for aliens to come visit us, and it really isn't worth it. But the question of whether we'll discover life in the universe is a different issue, and I think that's quite plausible.
We have decided, merely based on the sheer number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy alone, some several hundred billion, that the likelihood of life is very great. It just seems counterintuitive that life could only have arisen on one planet, one very ordinary planet, circling a very ordinary star.
It's just inconceivable to me that only life in a place with trillions of planets would be on this little blue planet around a small, insignificant sun.
As long as I believe that there is a supreme being, how can we ever be so arrogant to believe that that supreme being did not create life elsewhere in the universe? So, sometime, somewhere, maybe we'll find our brothers out there in the universe.
This Voices of the Millennium is brought to you by Zales, the Diamond Store. Forever starts today with a diamond from Zales.
Zales reminds you that a new millennium only comes along once every 1,000 years. And if you've had the good fortune to have fallen in love at this time, there's only one way to mark the occasion. With the Diamond Solitaire from the Zales Signature Collection. An exquisite single diamond is a powerful gift. It has the power to take two people
And